making my way into the kitchen at home. Both my parents worked, and so I would go into the kitchen and I would make terrible things when no one was around, and that's kind of how I got my start. But you know, my first job, I started cooking at a Japanese restaurant, and then kind of worked there for a couple of years, began working in a bed and breakfast on Tybee Island in Savannah, Georgia. And at that point, when I graduated high school, I went to the School of Culinary Arts in Atlanta, Georgia. Went there for 2 years right out of high school. When I graduated there, I moved to Athens, Georgia, and met a guy named Hugh Atchison, and started working with him at his restaurant, 5 and 10. And he hired me on as a sous chef, and I worked with him for about 12 years, for a really long time. I went back during that time and got a business degree at the University of Georgia, and eventually became his executive chef of 5 and 10. And so helped him write a cookbook. It was a really good experience, but after 12 years, I was like, what else can I do? Is this the only thing I can do? So at that point, I ended up moving to Asheville and started working with John Fleer. I met John Fleer many years ago. He was the executive chef of Blackberry Farm in Tennessee, and loved John Fleer. Ran into him again and heard he was opening a rhubarb restaurant. And so I was like, do you need any help? And so a couple weeks later, I was hanging out with John Fleer, cooking oatmeal with him on his front porch, going through the list of things at the farmer's market in Asheville, and creating the menu for rhubarb. And so I worked there for a while, and then had this opportunity to open up Pinpoint with a regular that would come into 5 and 10 in Athens, Georgia all the time. My business partner, Jeff Duckworth. He was a Bojangles franchisee. He would show up into the restaurant and bring in buckets of chicken late night, and everyone immediately loved him. We're like, you're the best. Like, you're bringing us Bowberry biscuits at 10 o'clock at night. We love you. And so years later in Asheville, Jeff actually called me and said, I want to move to Wilmington and do this restaurant thing. And I was like, I've never been to Delaware. I don't know what it's like there. And he's like, it's not Delaware, it's North Carolina. So Lydia, my better half, and our pastry chef from the start, we started visiting Wilmington. Jeff moved there. At the time, I started teaching culinary arts at AB Tech in Asheville. And about 2 weeks after we had that initial conversation, Jeff found the space, which is 114 Market Street in downtown Wilmington. And when that happens, that's a major reality check, because at that point you're like, I either do this or I don't, and there's a window and it will shut. So we went to look at the space, and it was the perfect space for a restaurant. It had everything we needed. It had an existing bar, it had a kitchen, it had dry storage, it used to be a restaurant. It was a very well-loved restaurant by the name of Deluxe for many years. Above it was where all the cast members from Dawson's Creek would hang out. Any Dawson's Creek fans out there? Okay. But yeah, nice. But yeah, we're on the Dawson's Creek tour. It's funny, they have a bus that goes by at Pinpoint, and hopefully now they can mention that we have good food too. But yeah, so we opened up, and we've been open for about 3.5 years, and it's been such a great thing. It's been, we moved into this community that we weren't super familiar with. We started looking for connections with farmers and people who were fishing, and just people connected to food, and much to, not our surprise, but to, it was a really happy moment when we discovered that there's a lot of great food being produced in Wilmington.